Good afternoon. My name is Joe Perfetti. Welcome to the latest edition of Learning Community's Office Hours. Today, we'll be talking about moving online. And joining me, we'll have Jeff Weiss from Tot Labs, Judy Frells from the University of Maryland, and Scott Coher from the Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in just a second, but the premise of the show today is the panel that we've established with faculty have years of experience in online education. And we all know that as a result of COVID-19, we were all thrown in the pond. Plans that were months and years ahead were accelerated into days and weeks. And so what we thought with the show today is we would kind of share with you some best practices of what's worked online, what hasn't worked online, and give you some very practical tools and examples. I would also remind you that this show is being broadcast on YouTube Live. So if you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to ask them in the chat box and we'll be happy to address them. But again, I want to thank you, panel, for being here today. So Jeff, if you want to do a quick intro, we'll kind of go around the horn here.
Yeah, hi Joe, it's great to be here. My name is Jeff Weiss. As you mentioned, I'm the founder of Tot Labs. We're a company that helps subject matter experts, individuals, institutions, corporations bring their training online. The reason I got into Tot Labs, the genesis of Tot Labs is actually out of a business I started previously back in 2012. I founded an online real estate school and learned how to do everything from video production to internet marketing and customer support and web development. And from there, found opportunities in the corporate world to help other individuals and entities bring their training and education online too. So I'm excited to be here and share some of the best practices I've learned over the past 8 or so years.
Great. And Judy?
Great. Joe, it's great to be here with you. I'm Judy Frells. I'm with the University of Maryland, College Park. I'm a faculty member in marketing, but I spent about 5 years of my life bringing the University of Maryland, College Park online. So I started the online MBA, got that up and running. We launched another MS in online in business analytics. And probably the thing I'm proudest of is I convinced the University of Maryland to launch a MicroMasters on the edX platform. So I have a lot of experience designing online degree programs and convincing reticent faculty members that online learning works. And I convinced myself in the process as well. So I'm happy to be here.
And thank you, Judy. And for full disclosure, I was one of those reticent faculty members. Scott?
That's great. I appreciate that, Judy. None of us have reticent faculty, right?
Right.
In our institutions, right. Scott Coher, I serve as Vice President for Strategy and Planning at the Geisinger School of Medicine, and also the founding dean of the graduate school there, and also on the faculty, but love the online learning space. So look forward to talking about some of the things that we're doing today.
So as we get started here today, I want to kind of be practical in terms of, if people are out there thinking about, all right, I'm moving my programs online, what are some of the first things I should be thinking about? Anybody want to start with that?
I'll jump in. I think one of the things that worked really well for us at Maryland was coming up with this notion of having a key faculty member for each course so that we don't have 5 people designing what essentially will be the exact same course, only with their unique twists and turns. And this is tricky because faculty are tied to their content, and I totally get that. But what we did was we tried to get 1 or 2 key faculty to design what would be all the asynchronous work. And that way we're only paying to have that done once, but we do it very carefully. And then we give faculty some synchronous time with the students so that was their opportunity to kind of customize it to their own sort of proclivities or topics. But we really tried to get some economies of scale by not having every single course designed uniquely. And I can talk about that more later, but I think if you can kind of get people in a mindset to cooperate a bit, you can actually come out with a much higher quality product and save yourself a ton of investment and get people excited and in a team mentality instead of frustrated and afraid.
But one of the things is, and again, as a faculty, I appreciate the too many cooks in the kitchen problem, but can we just take what we were doing in a classroom and just do it online in the same way?
No. We cannot. So people get fatigued. All of us are going home at the end of the day going, oh my God, I can't have one more Zoom meeting. I don't want to Zoom with my family. I need to get away from the computer. Students are that way as well. So they need to have kind of bite-sized chunks that they can do. So we tried to really chunk out the content and help students have a variety of mechanisms to engage in it. So maybe read something, maybe watch a video, and all those videos need to be smaller chunked. So we had that. And anything that we told faculty, anything that you're going to lecture, then please record it and let the students watch it at 5 in the morning or in the middle of the night when they're nursing their baby or changing diapers, and let let people kind of absorb this content in their own time frame, and use that synchronous time, which we really valued at Maryland, use that for back and forth. Like, I'm going to stop now so we can have some back and forth to try and model what it is I'm actually saying. So yeah, you need to think it through a bit more. And an instructional designer, by the way, is invaluable in doing that.
What a great point to pick up on, Judy. So instructional designers, I think, are sort of the future. They're almost like the soothsayer, the sense maker of what's this multimodal experience going to be. Yeah. And I borrow that term from an old Duke colleague of mine and Joe's, Ray Smith. So Ray would talk about the multimodal environment rather than the online environment or the face-to-face environment. And the rationale there was if you've got good content, if you are orchestrated, if you're ready to interact, you're going to succeed in multiple venues. Now with COVID, we've got to be ready to live in this online venue, but synchronous, asynchronous, and all of our tightly held beliefs of, well, you've got to take the exam on Tuesday at 4 and you're going to be done at 4:45. Well, not anymore. Yeah. That's gone. That's gone.
You've been running these kind of real estate schools for certification. Synchronous working better, asynchronous? What's been your experience?
I think that there's really nothing that's going to replace that face-to-face in the classroom, one-on-one or one-to-a-few interaction. But in the interest of scaling and accessibility to making the academic environment, and there are different approaches to this. You've got the academic institutions, the higher education, and then you've got the corporate side that comes in, and they come at it from different approaches, because in the higher ed space, you've got instructors and educators that have been teaching, stand and deliver courses for years. And many of them are excellent at it. And as soon as you put them in front of a camera, or as soon as COVID comes around and they've got to figure out how to use Zoom, and they realize, wait a minute, what I've been doing for years doesn't work the same on Zoom. How do I change this? How do we change the structure of our course? That's when they realize, oh, there's a whole new way that this has to be done. So whether you're thrown into the deep end, or you've been an institution that has been doing hybrid training, so you've sort of eased into it, where you have some individuals in the classroom, you've got some anywhere in the world, they're able to virtually raise their hand. It depends on the institution, but a lot of individual and educators in the academic world were really just sort of thrown into the deep end to say, well, now we just have to meet on Zoom twice a week and we'll figure it out. But the structure of a course is very different when it's asynchronous from when it's synchronous. And an asynchronous course is much more efficient because you don't have that engagement with the students. There's no pauses for questions. So you're able to pack a 40-hour course into 15 to 20 hours, and you realize, wait a minute, where's all the rest of the time? Why do we need all this extra time? And I think Judy and Scott and Joe, you've experienced this because you've all taught in hybrid environments or just online, or you've done webinars. And it's very different when people are able to engage with you and ask questions and go off on tangents and respond. And it's a very different space to be in. So helping our clients, we work with clients in the academic world and also in the corporate world. And the conversations are similar, but they're different because they're starting from different places.
So Jeff, I want to build on what you said and add to this. So first of all, I was on a call this morning with a company with a very senior leader. And one of the things that they talked about, which surprised me, was that they wanted to send some of their senior leaders who were going to be helping with the online training and kind of leading some Q&As with presentation skills training, because it wasn't just the faculty that have to learn how to teach online, but even some of the participants don't know how to communicate online. And that was actually a surprise, a precursor, is that I think we all need to learn how to communicate differently in this environment than a traditional meeting. But I also would say, in my experience in the last 90 days, as everything in exec ed has moved online, there's virtually no executive education that's being done, as well as traditional education. I found 3 rules. I'm going to put them up here. Wrong 3 rules. These 3 rules. Number 1, you can't go more than about 90 minutes in a webinar where people then burn out and don't pay attention anymore. Matter of fact, we actually tried to run 2 webinars, 90 minutes in the morning, 90 minutes in the afternoon with a client. And the feedback was they were more burned out after that than they were in an 8-hour face-to-face day.
Wow.
Second thing we learned is you got to flip the classroom. You can't deliver content in a webinar. People just aren't going to sit there listening to a talking head. There's just too many distractions. And if you have to do that, you got to find a different forum to do it than the webinar itself. And the third piece is the webinar, it's got to be interactive. It can't just be the talking head. And you have to find ways to make it interactive. And at least 50% has got to be interactive. Otherwise, it's not going to be impactful. That's what I'm learning as a faculty doing this. Are you guys having similar experiences?
I mean, those were really some of the hallmarks of what we tried to drill into our faculty as we brought them online at Smith at Maryland was, if you can stand here and just say it, don't do that. Capture that in the video. Don't do that in the live session or the synchronous session, and give it to them in small chunks, and then make that live session interactive. And I will say we've got faculty, and I got thrown into the pool too, even though I was the assistant dean of online programs. My administrative role had taken up so much space, I wasn't teaching so much. And so when March happened, I actually got thrown into the online teaching pool as well, the deep end of that pool. And I said, okay, all my synchronous time now is going to be completely about doing cases and back and forth. And I took all the videos that I had made for the MicroMasters, and I said, here's your lecture. You do that whenever you want. Just watch these videos whenever it's convenient for you before you come to class. But those 3 rules, Joe, I think I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. 8 years ago, when I launched the first version of our real estate courses, they were 2-hour segments, 2-hour courses broken into 3 40-minute segments. And the reason they broke them into 3 40-minute segments is because it was just too long to upload a video for 2 hours, and tracking and technology wasn't really there to deliver a 2-hour straight on course. So it was in 40-minute segments. And as we've learned and we've heard our feedback from students, and we've tested new approaches to delivering training, what we found, to fast forward to today, is instead of 3 40-minute segments, we might have 26-minute segments on discrete topics, which is really great for the learner, because if they remember learning something or talking about something on a specific topic, they can refer back to that specific video in the course and review it, fast forward. They don't have to be scrolling back and forth, and they could pay attention more to the more important things or more relevant topics to them, and they can work through the course at their own pace. It's tougher to commit to 90 minutes than it is for 10 minutes, especially if you're doing it remotely. Whether you've got kids at home, you're doing it on your break at work, however you're completing the course, on your commute, you might not have 40 minutes to commit. So bite-sized chunks where 90 minutes might be a good session length in total. I always tell all of our clients that you want to keep those individual videos within those sessions, or within a 90-minute webinar, the sections, keep them nice and tight, keep it concise, and make there be an ability for people to scroll and seek between them so they can jump around to what was important and where they want to review.
Yeah. By the way,
there's a lot there with your 3 rules, Joe. The only thing that I would say is I think we're still learning about what's the right time. It's I know you love to use the Bezos quote. If you're having a meeting, don't have more than if it's more people than 2 pizzas, too many people. When I look at 90 minutes, I think of, okay, so what is my attention span? And, it's sad to say, but much of it is driven by entertainment. So if you look at a sitcom on television, And if you're binging on Netflix right now, you see that sitcoms are really only between about 19 and maybe 24 minutes of actual show. And that's sort of generous on the high end. And the rest are commercials. So people have the attention span of, 19 to 24 minutes. So in my experience, I'm thinking of, what am I going to do with about 30 minutes? And how am I going to organize that 30 minutes? So, if you're watching what's that show my daughters were watching there? Who's That Girl? Just Jess. Have you seen that one? It's a riot. No. So, there are about, 4 to 7 different things happening in the course of any, 20 plus or so minute show. So how do I organize, the points I'm going to make? And that goes back to the point Judy was making about the instructional designer. Instructional designers are a great partner with excellent faculty. And I've seen both, Joe, you and Judy in the classroom, and you're exceptional faculty. But the instructional designer helps you organize into these bite-sized chunks, so you can sequence, it's a lot more of an edutainment value for high quality learning, I would argue, than what we're used to with content-rich faculty like the two of you and others.
Well, I think I like the idea you've been using edutainment for years, and I think somewhat it is edutainment. That's what makes better faculty, especially when you move online, because people have to find what you say compelling. And so therefore, I think 2 rules matter.
We were ahead of our time with that one, Joe.
Absolutely. It helped me get better in the classroom. But that was the point. Like, one of the rules I always had was 1 insight per hour. You have to give 1 aha moment per hour if you're going to teach all day. Otherwise, people are just going to tune out. Yeah. So here's the point. You've accelerated that. Now I need 1 insight every 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah. I think that just needs to be driving our instructional design as we're being interesting. The other piece is it can't just be one way. So for example, in the last 90 days, tip number 2, I've been interviewing people to kind of have the content done or getting interviewed rather than having just the faculty stand and deliver. Because it sounds simple, but that actually changes the dynamic and makes it much more compelling to watch.
It's much more engaging. When we produce courses for our real estate school, we also produce courses for clients. It's so much better to have 2 people on camera. Here we've got 4 in this session, but when you have multiple people, you attract different audiences. So when I'm talking, maybe someone's more interested about what I'm saying than what you're saying, or they can relate to what you're saying. It just, having multiple people, it also fills the gap. For anyone who's taught online before in an asynchronous format where there's no feedback loop, it's really difficult to talk to a camera and not know if people are getting it, if there's questions. Am I even speaking English right now? It's different when you're standing in front of a classroom of people who are nodding their head and they're smiling and there's just engagement. So when it's better to have multiple people because the other person is thinking about what they're going to say, but they also can ask you questions to clarify points that maybe you understand and your viewers might not. So it creates a bit of a pause, and you see this a lot in a lot of the news channels as well. It's not just one person who sits up there for an hour. It's always a myriad of people in their respective roles that are on camera sharing whatever the information is that's relevant at the time.
Yeah, actually, you just made the whole marketing blurb for why we're having office hours, because that's the whole point, is that people don't get a chance to ask questions. They don't get the clarifications they need, and we want to have a diversity of opinion and perspectives as they try and apply that. So the other thing that I find interesting in this conversation in terms of how people are accessing the online, because it's also going more mobile. So I think the device is changing the way people consume it. Are you seeing that at Geisinger? Like, you put like your whole medical stuff online. Like, what kind of lessons learned are you learning from that and access by mobile?
Yep, absolutely. We actually created a whole website just to help faculty acclimate themselves and think about what the user, what that learner is going to be doing on the other end. So First thing we did is we went out and bought a bunch of devices, and we wanted to say, okay, so do they have a Surface Pro? Do they have an iPad? Do they have a desktop? Do they have a laptop? How does it look? What's that? What's that user experience? The other thing that we realized was that this content, it's like building a website. If you build a website and it's responsive design, then it looks good on your phone. It looks good on any screen. That's how I think about education when I interact with our instructional designers. I ask them all the time, are you building a physiology course that has a responsive design? Are you thinking about anatomy from the standpoint so that you don't have to be in the gross anatomy lab, but you can see what's taking place inside of the human body from a screen? So these are very important questions for that ongoing engagement, especially when you have to deal with the fatigue of a pandemic where you really are sequestered. And, this user interface is our linchpin to continuing the business of higher education. So, yeah, it's an important question, Joe, and a lot goes into it.
Well, fortunately, we live in a time where technology is at a point where it can support these different devices on different connections and literally anywhere in the world. I have friends at large companies, and they're engineers, and their sole job is to make sure that a video that streams on LinkedIn can be played in India on a cell phone that has a 3G connection and looks like it's HD quality on a cell phone in an area that normally otherwise shouldn't even be able to get standard definition video, and they do a good job at it. So there are people focused on bringing this education, making it accessible to anyone, anywhere in the world.
Yeah, and actually, I don't know a lot of the details of how this worked when we were working on the online MBA, but I know that ADA, accessibility is an important piece, and there's a lot of companies that can help you make sure that whatever you put up is going to be accessible to people with different types of disabilities, and that can be quite challenging. But transcripts are huge. Going back to multimodal, lots of times I don't want to wait for somebody to say it on a video. I want to read it, and so putting the transcripts up, and there's a lot of automatic transcripting software that you can use. All those sorts of things can help your student pick a different way to engage with the content, rather than having to watch the video again, because I think people just get burnt out on that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So I want to turn to instructional design for a second, because I think that's a very important concept as well. And so, again, as I think about how to take my material online, I've kind of come up with a hierarchy, and I just wanted to share that briefly with the group. But the first thing is, when you're doing online, first thing I think about is I got to get everybody level set on some content. So I'm going to do a content data dump. First question you should be asking yourself is the online forum the appropriate way to do this? Because if we do have these 90-minute or less sessions, every minute is precious. So doing a one-way data dump in that 90 minutes is actually taking away from your opportunity to do something else. So that's where you think about other opportunities for asynchronous. But number two, the next question is, how do you get people to connect the dots? Because I can't just do a data dump. I got to get them to start to think about how these concepts really apply and work together, which then means I got to get to application so that they're actually doing something. And I think that's the key to the online 90 minutes, meaning it should be much more about connecting the dots and application than it is about driving content. And I think that's what's going to separate out better education. But then we got to be practical, because if in a micro learning sense, I'm not going to spend my time unless I can actually use it in a real world context. So I think applicability starts to become really critical. And I always heard that, training improves productivity by 20%. Training plus coaching is 80%. So eventually I need to get my participants to become their own teachers, because by teaching, not only do they learn, but they disseminate the message. So when we start thinking of instructional design, those are some principles that I have been thinking about myself as I've been working in online courses. So, but I'll turn it to professionals here.
When we start working with our clients who are building courses for the first time or have been building courses for a while in their own way, one of the first sort of stepping stones that we try to define is what are the learning objectives for that session?
Yeah.
You know, by the end of the session, what is that individual going to learn? What are the measurable results, the takeaways that they're going to have? And when you outline what those items are, it helps you to structure your time inside of that session. You know, if there are 3 main goals of that session, you know, what do you have to talk about to actually convey those 3 points, to get those so that the other person on the other side understands those points? And it's not necessarily just teaching it, it's giving them activities to do. It's giving them external resources and materials that they can reference and, you know, find more information about a specific topic. I mean, in an asynchronous format, and even in a synchronous virtual format, people they're listening to you. They might be Googling something else. They might be chatting with someone else in the room. They're always looking for new ways to find more information. So between what you're conveying and the materials and resources you're giving them, they should have a really good feeling of like understanding those topics by the time you're done in that session.
Joe, what you put up really reminded me of Bloom's taxonomy, right? Yep. That we want, and those first few things, absolutely. Like you can almost do some connecting the dots through exercise. So I see content like the data dump that you said. We use video a lot for that. We use reading. We use, you know, those are mostly the 2 things we use for data dumps, right? As you're calling them, or content, knowledge transfer. Yeah. Starting to connect the dots, that could be some exercises, but then that application, getting people, especially to think on their feet. And my students are always like, why do you want me to think on your feet? I'm like, because that will force you to have those concepts at ready. And when you form those connections between this concept, and I see when Scott said it, it went like zing, yep. You know, that's what really makes the learning fun. So I see us walking through that. And I think an instructional designer is really great about that. And Jeff, to your point of learning objectives, faculty will try and cram stuff into a course that doesn't relate to a learning objective. And you're like, well, the instructional designers will kindly say, but which of the learning objectives is this tied to? Well, none of them, but it's always been in my course and it just needs to be there. Like, okay, either we're missing a learning objective, which we could be, right? Or maybe this doesn't have to be in the course, or maybe this is like an optional piece that you put down for really the people who want the deep dive. But Coer, we went through this a lot when we were designing that program in Tianjin a long time ago. And we had some faculty, man, kicking and screaming on those learning objectives, but they're essential. Otherwise, you're just all over the place.
Yeah, yes, we did. Isn't it funny how someone's favorite article from the 1920s finds its way back in, or that, you know, case study that they wrote when they were in, you know, their doctoral program? Gotta have it.
Yeah.
I think that was an accounting professor, but I'm not mentioning any names.
I'm a finance professor, so it wasn't me. But, yeah. But in all seriousness, I actually like combining the 2 concepts you guys are talking about, because I think Jeff's concept of working backwards is critical, because we don't work backwards when we design courses. Our natural inclination is to say, this is what I want to teach you. Yeah. As opposed to starting with learning objectives and then figuring out what content aligns. So I really like that. But here's the other thing, prioritization. I think the move to online and the idea that things are condensed is forcing us to prioritize, and we don't want to do it. Yeah. We just want to, you know, turn on the fire hose and spray as much knowledge as we possibly can, and that may not be efficient.
You know, from a business model standpoint too, I have to say the requirement for more discipline here comes to my mind. So, you know, Judy, you know, put your dean hat on. So with my graduate dean hat on, I find myself in faculty forums asking the question, so, you know, confirm for me that we're adhering to, you know, accreditation standards for contact time, you know, for ensuring that we're not overburdening or overtaxing the students. But faculty do want to put more in. So, you know, on the positive side, even if it is that article that, you know, I wrote back in the 20s when I was a doctoral student, you know, that's great. It's generous. But from the business model and the discipline time, is that really even the best way for the faculty member to use their time? They want to give more, but it's not efficient. And why, and Judy, you mentioned this earlier, or pardon me, maybe it was Jeff, but why get people to do the same thing again and again and again? So if I, Joe, see your lecture on financial cycle time and you just nailed it and it's memorialized in, a digital format, I want to go back to that all the time, because the value is not having you do that, 97 times in a semester. The value is seeing that great piece and then having the conversation with you.
Yes.
That's the value.
Yes.
And this frees us. This frees us to be more efficient with the business model. It frees us not to give what we don't need to do. Why waste our time doing something that we've already done really well once?
Can I jump on that? Because for viewers, one thing to remember is that when COVID is over, you're still going to have these assets. Whatever you create during this time to teach online, you're still going to have them. And what we found, even before COVID, we had created this MicroMasters class on edX, and we started pulling those videos into our full-time MBA program. I said, look, I'm going to explain it to you in class. If you don't get it, you can watch the video, and that will explain it. And we pulled it into our China program to get people ready for us when we land on the ground in China. They will have watched these videos. But my colleague made all these videos about STP, segmenting, targeting, positioning, all these marketing videos. They're short and they're brilliant. And I'm like, oh my God, I spend like 45 minutes explaining that. And he just did it in 8 minutes. And honestly, it's beautiful. And so then I really, I was a little bit taken aback. But now what I say, hey, watch Dave Goddess explain this. And then you're going to get together in a Zoom meeting with me, and we're going to talk about it. And you're going to walk me through how you would do it. But it can be really profound. So you're saying, seeing Joe describe something in finance, when somebody does it well and it's captured, boom. I mean, now, if you have time, you can use that time for so many more of those things, Joe, that are further down your graphic, that are more engaging, applying, teaching somebody else. Okay, you think you understand it? Let me explain it to Jeff. If I can explain it to Jeff, then maybe I do understand it.
There's one, so I asked a group of faculty at one point, how much do you practice before you deliver a lecture? Are you prepared to deliver that lecture? And they said, well, I've spent hours. I have a PhD in this. Wonderful. How much time did you prepare? How did you practice to deliver the financial cycle time lecture? Of course I did. Well, after, the debate and after the challenge and the hostility dies down, all of a sudden they start to engage with an instructional designer and they say, oh my God, people spend more time creating that sitcom that I referred to earlier than they do preparing to deliver this all-important lecture that brings the whole program together. This changes everything. Now we're preparing. Now Joe sees himself and, he does multiple takes, but man, when he nails it, he nailed it. So, Joe, I'm thinking about the lectures, in the videos we just did on strategic agility. And, we did multiple shoots.
Well, the key is what your eventual message has got to be is just very clear.
Yeah.
We just need to be clarity, simplicity, get to the point, forget the fluff, especially in the online world. And then that other stuff, questions, Q&A, conversation, dialogue, application.
Yeah.
But from a design standpoint, I know not everyone can afford an instructional designer. So can you share us a little bit, maybe we'll start with Scott, about as you guys put the online medical programs for graduates, like what were some of the pieces you used of the puzzle to put together that you might be able to share with the audience?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can just pull one of those slides that I've got. It doesn't really matter which one, but there are a couple of things. So, and Judy, you may remember a couple of years ago, I picked up the phone and called you and said, all right, what are you doing? How are you doing it?
Yeah.
Who are you doing it with? And that was part of my inspiration. So, we had to get the right learning management system in place. And I appreciate that Jeff's got a little bit of expertise in this as well. But we chose Canvas. We had been a Blackboard shop. We chose Canvas for a whole set of reasons because it combined well with Panopto. Then we had to figure out, okay, so are we tying in Zoom for distance? How are we testing? And then how are we preparing? So, we got those anchor software tools in place We practiced. We developed a rhythm. But then what we did was we built this great technology guide. I don't know, Joe, if you can pull up that website for me real quick before I yield. But we looked at both, the faculty and the learner. And we said, what do they need? What if they get stuck? Do they have a hotline? Who are they going to call? What's going to go on with them? And we decided that we had to build both sets of tools and contact information for faculty and student. And it's really helped. It's really helped, especially when you're in different time zones. Judy, you mentioned China. It can make all the difference. So those are some of the things that we pulled in. And so here's our, we have Tech Tuesdays. So every Tuesday, we have a Tech Tuesday. Every other Tuesday, we'll have an in-depth learning module where we'll take on issues that faculty or students raise, and we'll take a deep dive. So lots of good stuff in here. And I've just, very fortunate, guys, where I've got this great, very agile instructional design team. And, they whipped this together in no time. And here they are. Joe Ivanek built this great team with Shannon and Matt Marighi. They're wizards, is all I can say. They're wizards.
Don't advertise them too much, Scott. Watch out.
I know. Well, it's COVID. We locked them up. We don't let them. Right. And these are just likenesses of people that are random. You have no idea who they are.
Those aren't even their names.
Their identities are hidden. Yeah.
Okay, so that was important. So you had the right technology backbone. What were some of the other things? Like Jeff, what were some of the other things? Because obviously you have a technology platform that you're starting from scratch. You did the non-degree stuff, but what were some of the other kind of key ingredients that people need to think about if they're building from scratch right now?
The tools, one of the biggest challenges, and this sort of addresses your question, back when I went to school, which was 10 years ago, which feels, I don't know, like a long time, but I guess it wasn't relative to
just wait.
Like people currently here. I think one of the greatest values, the takeaways from my education, was not the formulas that were taught to us by the instructors, but it was the ability to solve problems, to work in teams, and with the introduction and the forced movement to online education, the technology that allows individuals and groups to interact with each other. So it's not just instructor to student, but it's also student to student. It's student to instructor. You can bring some TAs or assistants in to sort of interact in the forums. Some of the platforms out there, they enable groups. You put a few up on the screen earlier. And the ability to work in teams was one of the greatest takeaways from my college experience. Because it's very practical. Anyone can figure out how to work their way through some finance formula that no one understands for a good portion of the course. But to be able to work in a group, to be able to solve your own problems, I think that this COVID experience for higher education has been a real eye-opener for students and for the institution. Say, well, how do we solve these problems? Joe, you had a great session, I think it was last week, with an individual from MedStar. And they were talking about how they had a 3-year plan to move into telehealth. And because they had really no other options, they were able to execute it. And as far as I understand, they executed very well in just 7 days. Yep. Within a month, they had 4,000 of their physicians seeing patients using their telehealth system. And the ability to solve that problem didn't come from sitting through a course. It came from the experiences that the individuals had working through problems with teams, overcoming the challenge of how do we teach online. It's the actions that students go through. It's not necessarily always just the content that they learn.
But you bring up another really good point here, which is, and the example you referred to at MedStar is how they went because of COVID from a system that pretty much didn't exist to a system that scaled up to 4,000 telehealth visits per day in 30 days with a team that didn't exist before it started. the original plan was to do this in 3 years. And you had asked me when you heard about this, so I just want to relate the comment to add to what you said, which is, what took them so long to do this? Like, why could they do this in 7 days now where they couldn't have done this in 7 days before COVID? Like, how much did COVID force the change? And that's really the other side of this, which is, people right now are like, oh my God, we got to go online, scramble, don't know what to do. Yet, people have done this fairly quickly, fairly successfully. What do you think the barrier is there? Is it just prioritization? Is it just culture? Like, what's causing people the ability to not move rapidly into this online world?
Yeah, that's sort of the question that I ask all of our clients. When we talk about, initially have conversations about what is it that you're currently doing, where do you want to be? Naturally, I press them and I say, well, why haven't you been doing this? Yeah. A lot of what's available has been available for a while, and it's not impossible to just spin up a test environment or try something and just see how it works. And now in the COVID times, it's the best time to try new things. People are forgiving in new initiatives because people are always looking for new and better ways to do things. And I think one of the answers that certain people might not want to hear is that, well, that's just how we've always done things. Things just always take a while.
I think that the reason I'm going to guess that MedStar didn't rush to be online is because people like to be with other people, right? And we like to see other people. All of us, even those of us who are reasonably good at teaching online, almost all of us say they would rather teach face-to-face. I do have a few faculty who say they like the students that we get in the online world. But, there's no reason for all of us to go online. Now, why did they? But you can imagine a world where MedStar would have made that an option, and it shouldn't have taken them 3 years to get to, having a telehealth option available. But I hope we aren't saying that all medicine should be done electronically, because I'm sure that there's lots of people who don't want that, right?
Well, Judy, let me pose the question to you directly in a different way. How long did it take you to get that MicroMasters program online?
To actually do it, or to get the system to agree that we could do it?
There you go. I think that's the point. But yeah, what's the answer to both of those questions?
So it probably took me, I probably worked about 2 years before the first class was launched, and 1 year and 9 months of that was getting the Smith School and the University of Maryland to agree that we could do this. Then the rest of it, then it was probably the most insane 3 months of my life was to build the first course, which was, of course, marketing, because how do you convince other faculty to do it? You jump in and show them how, and you do it first. Yeah. But yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, people, well, there's a snob element to it too. We don't do online. MIT's doing online. They have a MicroMasters. Why can't we have one? Well,
right. Blah, blah, blah. Yep. Well, remember, Judy, back in the day when we were talking about the executive MBA, and no one wanted to do it, but the late great Howard Frank said, "Well, what are they going to do? Stop you from doing it?"
Yeah.
So we did it. We didn't ask permission, but to your point, Joe, about barriers to change or barriers to launch. We got. I love to quote Machiavelli, never so perilous a task than to change the order of things, because those who, have to make the change are lukewarm. So people play the wait and see game. The difference now, getting right to the point I think you're making, we had to. If we didn't do it, we didn't have tuition revenue.
Yeah.
We had to. And this is what's being faced all across America for institutions of higher education. How will you have revenue in the fall? How will you do it? What's going to happen with your dorm revenue? What's going to happen with your food and beverage revenue? What's going to happen with your athletic revenue if you're Maryland or some other great athletic organization? But at the end of the day, this is all supposed to be about education. So we had to. That's why we did it so fast. And that's what I would argue is why MedStar did it so fast.
Well, so two things. So number one is, I'm reminded of the old IBM quote that, you never got fired for ever hiring IBM. And the same thing is probably true about Microsoft. You don't get fired for using Microsoft these days. And that's the point, is that culturally, nobody wants to take the risk, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And then the second part is nice to have versus need to have. When things are need to have, then you move it up the priority list. And people always assumed that they were nice to have. And so that's the point. I think the reason why we're having this conversation today is overnight, we went from nice to have to need to have. And it's not just about revenue for education. It's about productivity.
Yep.
It's about jobs where people are now doing 3 jobs where they weren't doing 1. It's about reskilling. Whatever it is, you got to do something different. Now we need that just-in-time education, and the systems have to catch up. So that goes back to we have to be much more practical in what we do.
When we were trying to get the MicroMasters approved, and for those who don't know, that's a massive open online course, a MOOC that's on the edX platform. Tons of great educational stuff going on out there. One of the faculty members did say, somebody said, "What's the risk of doing this? What is the risk?" And somebody else just shut him down. I was just hiding. And somebody else shut him down and said, "It's not what is the risk of doing it. It is what is the risk of not doing it."
Right.
We must do this. And I'm telling you, it's paid off, because we have all this beautiful content that we can now pull into our classes. But yeah.
We talk about this when I talk about this with a lot of academic individuals. It feels like it's coming from a place where it's like, oh, we had to do this. We never really wanted to do it, and it's like our school sort of forced us a little bit, or COVID came along and we had to do it. But I've been coming from the approach of you should be doing this, and there are certain areas that probably should do it less than others, because you need to be in a lab or you need to be in a medical environment. But for a lot of different topics and course and subjects, it should be done online, and not entirely online, but the option to be it online. Scott talks about how he had to do it because tuition revenue would create some significant challenges for the institution. But there's a lot being left on the table by not bringing at least portions of your courses online. And it doesn't have to be a paid course. It can be a MOOC that's free and open and available to the world. And you could use that as lead gen to say, hey, here's what it's actually like to be in one of our courses. If you want to be in the course, come sign up. And I think that's a different approach that a lot of academic institutions have just been sort of avoiding, and hanging out in that wait and see mode to see how things shape up. But putting some of your professors online, not for full semester-long courses, but just bite-sized courses on topics that are interesting to people who might be interested in majoring in accounting or becoming a doctor, saying like, hey, this is one of our professors. Take this hour-long course on a topic that isn't going to certify you for anything, but you'll get to see what it's like to learn from this individual. And if you like him, you could sign up for one of him or her courses.
All right, the question for the group. Post-COVID, do we go backwards?
What's
No.
backwards?
With online, now that we're moving online, do we go backwards post-COVID with the online movement? Go back to the classroom?
I think we might go back a little bit, and so we might see each other more face to face. If the target market, I'm a marketer, so if there's a target market that wants that, I think we'll go back and offer some of that. But I think doing a lot more, restructuring our classes around learning objectives, around what absolutely has to be communicated, what's the must-have, what's the nice-to-have. I think hopefully that will continue, because I think it makes a lot more sense. To Scott's point about efficiency, discipline.
Yeah, we don't go back. This is why I said multimodal at the start. What has now happened is that we have the ability to see Dr. Frells anywhere on the planet. And, Judy, I remember being in one of your presentations for an exec MBA program, and you're going through the slides, and all of a sudden, you probably remember this. You start clicking really fast. Nope. Yep, like this, don't like this. What do you think of that? Oh, too long. Nope. I say that because it was a riot. The whole room, lit up in laughter. But we create brands. We create the importance of faculty personality that can be transferred well beyond anyone you're ever able to see if we just do this traditionally. in effect, we're doing more for our institutions.
Yep.
We're doing more for the faculty. We're doing more for the students. I would argue that it makes the best faculty even more valuable, and it gives the faculty who aren't comfortable an opportunity to improve or to find different mediums. So this multimodal, more than ever, it's here. More than ever, I think we're going to see it evolve. And you know what? People are impatient. I don't want to wait until, August to enroll in a class. I want to see it now.
Yeah.
Same thing is happening in healthcare. Same thing happens in entertainment. This is why, Netflix and Hulu and all this good stuff. I want it now. I want what I want now. What do I want? I don't know what I want, but I want a choice, but I know I want it now. We want to see Dr. Frill's marketing course now. It's not going away.
10 years ago, when I was sitting in a classroom getting my master's, there was a hybrid course. This was 10 years ago, and they were using technology that was streaming to people all over the world. I don't know how many people there were, but it was available in the classroom and online. And COVID will be around for however long it's around. Eventually, there will be a vaccine, hopefully, and probably sooner there will be therapies to treat people so their outcomes are a little bit better than what's currently been in the news. But I don't think there's no going backwards. It's been around for a long time. I think there are two parallel paths. I think that universities will find a very significant new revenue stream from the online space that they found themselves in a different way. I think that corporate training, because I believe all of us on right now have been in corporate training initiatives where it's been historically stand and deliver, and it's evolved into a stand and deliver with maybe some online pre-work or some online post-work, or it's been an online course that's available after the stand and deliver, or there's a stand and deliver course, and then that course is recorded and made available to the next 500 employees at the layers below the management or the executives. There's a lot of opportunities to really engage a larger audience with the same content, which is not only just better for knowledge transfer to more people, making the world a better and smarter place, it's also a revenue generating opportunity for the individuals who teach. It's a branding opportunity. There are some professors at just well-respected institutions that have their own podcasts, and they talk about things that are completely unrelated to their courses. And they also have consulting gigs, and they also will go in and teach to a group of individuals at some company on the other side of the world. Joe, I know you fly all over the world teaching corporate training topics.
5 months ago, yeah.
Or they've got office hours.
That's right. Office hours report. But I think that's the leveraging aspect is going to also probably, I'll agree, not allow us to go back, because it's almost like we're kind of realizing something we otherwise wouldn't have gotten, and then I don't think we're going to want to lose it. But a final question, just for the group, metrics. How do we know that the online is effective and actually doing the learning? Like, what are some of the metrics you guys are putting into your programs that are telling you that it's actually effective, whether it's in the Keep My Certified or whether it's in your degree programs?
Well, from a degree standpoint, we're still assessing the student's understanding of content, right? In fact, I would argue that we're probably now doing it more effectively than we did before, because we're asking the students a number of different questions now. So we use this little texting device with our students, and again, these are adult learners, typically graduate, master's, doctoral level candidates. So we're testing. We're saying, Judy, what did you think of the last lecture? No more than 3 questions at a time via text. And simple answers. We're collecting data, and then we give the data back to the students. We say, how is this resonating with you? Is this the outcome you would have expected? So I think that we're able to demonstrate that learning is happening, but what we're also able to do is reinforce the learning. So if I'm in a class that any of you are delivering, and I keep missing questions about ROI, you're going to be able to target differently than we could in just a traditional classroom, because you got more data, it's digital, we're pushing it back out. So the engagement is very different from my seat. It's a very different engagement. So Judy, I know you think about this statistical reinforcement all the time. What have you seen?
So we actually have a lot of learner data from our MicroMasters, and we haven't actually had the bandwidth to go back and dig into it as much as we want it. But to answer your question, Joe, directly, we decided we would give our online class MicroMasters, where it's all asynchronous, we would give them the same final exam that we gave in our completely synchronous face-to-face class. And we said, let's see how they do. And you know what? They do great. They do fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, says a lot to the fact that online works. And it works because the people that, especially in this MicroMasters, the people that are there choose to be there. Nobody, and they can opt out. They can just say, I don't want the certificate. I'm not going to take the test. I'm out of here. But the ones who choose to take the test, totally, they get it.
So Jeff, is your platform, you have tens and thousands of users that are taking this. What other metrics are you seeing your clients using, or are they saying that says it's effective or not?
So there's the obvious, multiple choice or assessments or exercises that you submit at the end and get either automatically graded or can be graded by the instructor or assistants. That's a great way to gauge retention and understanding. But our platform also tracks user progress down to the second. I don't know any other platforms out there that do that. And to use an exaggerated example that I use when I talk to all of our prospective clients, imagine you have a 4-hour course and it's broken into 4 one-hour videos. It's not a great way to structure your course, but it makes my point. You've got 10,000 people around the world. It's a free course available to everyone, and you're tasked with optimizing the course, making it the best it can possibly be. You're gonna add a survey at the end. You're gonna add some periodic, maybe multiple choice questions throughout to see if people are getting it. But then you're gonna realize that of those 10,000 people that started the course, only 3,000 of them completed it. And you just don't know what happened in there, and you don't know how to make it better. So when you're tracking user progress down to the second, our platform is able to create a report that said, of the 7,000 people that dropped off in the course, 87% of them left in the second video between the 13th and the 14th minute. And then when you go back to that video and you're like, wait a minute, we're talking about typewriters and dinosaurs right here. And the data shows that if you get past that point, you actually complete on average, most people complete the course. You might say, oh, well, let's just go tweak that part of the course. So there's the feedback that you're getting from your students, and then there's the feedback that you're getting from the data that says, if you can just get past these humps in the course, you're able to increase completion rates, enjoyment, engagement, whatever you're trying to measure against. So the platform's important in that you can track your progress in all different ways. But I think honestly, I still do this, I call our students all the time, and in the real estate school students, and I say, what can we be doing better? Because we're always working on new courses, updated versions of the courses. And some people prefer reading, so we want to put more visuals on the screen. Some people prefer to have transcripts. I think Judy mentioned that early on. She likes the transcripts, or students appreciate them to be able to follow along. Some people like handouts. So our courses have evolved over the past 8 years, and our guidance to our clients has evolved based on the feedback from corporate clients to just academic students to our real estate, professional education space.
I think that's why, by the way, just interrupt, that's why we can't go back, because it was traditionally smile sheets and to some degree your assessment of did you learn, test, grading. Now, in addition to that, we have this treasure trove of user data, which gives us much more insight into how they're learning as opposed to what they have learned. Right. And I think that's the real benefit of online, that if we can use that to iterate through, we will create more effective courses.
If we can, and if we will.
Well, again, bandwidth, as you talked about, and access to data, but the opportunity exists.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I know we're coming to the end of our time, and I appreciate what everybody did today. So as we kind of wrap up, I would just like each of us to kind of give one key takeaway. Like if you were to give one message, kind of give us a micro message to somebody that's listening and they're trying to get started online, what one key micro message would you say is the most important for them to hear? Does anyone want to start with that? You need a second to think? Does it put you on the spot?
I would say you sound fine on camera, because everyone hates the sound of their own voice. They hate how they look on camera, and everyone gets nervous and they freeze. I've sat next to, back when it was okay to sit next to people, I sat next to instructors and professors and people who have been teaching for a while, and you put them in front of the camera and they freeze up and they're like, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or they start to stutter, or it's like they're a whole new person. And I think you just have to get comfortable with the fact that you're talking to people through a camera. It feels a little bit weird, but you'll get comfortable. Everyone has the same problem. I'm still not entirely comfortable staring at a camera without having, right now behind my camera are the three of you, and I'm able to engage with you guys. And when I have a teleprompter, it's the same challenges that I have. And I've been doing this for years, and I've been telling and teaching how to do these things to other people. So everyone is uncomfortable getting started, but just power through it. Similar to how you had to power through, if you're a university professor, how you had to power through learning how to use Zoom in the past few months. Once you get past that hump, it gets a little bit easier. You get more comfortable, and the quality of your delivery and the content is just going to get way better over time. But everyone starts at that awkward phase of, am I doing a good job? I can't tell. There's no one around to ask me questions or tell me if I'm doing a good job. So just dive in, and you'll find out very quickly where your starting point is, and you'll learn very quickly about what are the things that you can be doing to do better.
All right, Judy, Scott.
Scott, do you have a simple rule off the top of your head?
I do. I have two. One, practice. And two, back to my Dr. Farrell's example, leverage what you got. So if you're funny and you're using asynchronous or synchronous, don't shy away from it. And then finally, have some fun with it. Have some fun.
Yeah. Okay. So I think my simple rule would be a combination of what my two colleagues were just saying. Don't edit out the ums. Don't edit out the pauses. That's when people think. When you pause to think, your listeners are pausing to think. And be quirky. We have a faculty member who brings his dog in. We have another faculty member who has a sock puppet. Run with it, right? Students need the levity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate the authenticity comment. Actually, the one I want to give is just from this conversation in general. I think Jeff's comment about beginning with the end in mind and working backwards on the learning objectives is a very important rule to always remember, because we so much design going forward that if we kind of begin with the learning objectives and stick to that with that learning journey, then I think we will effectively design more training that people will want to hear and actually accomplish our goals. So again, I want to thank all of you for taking the time today to be on our show. Again, if you want to see a repeat or review of this show or any other show, you can go to our website at learningcommunities.com. And essentially, we run these office hours on various topics. So again, Jeff, Judy, Scott, thanks for today. And thanks for those of you that have listened. Again, the professors have to go back to work. Have a good day.
Bye.
Good to be here, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.